Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. This episode's not sound is going to be interesting because most people probably don't really know that much about this particular online creator, especially depending on how much. It really depends if you know this person or not. If you do know this person, you probably understand why I am talking about them, but if you don't, then I don't know. You obviously don't understand, but you will soon enough. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to be talking about Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin has apparently jumped back into the news and has decided to appeal his conviction in the George Floyd trial. Now, here's the thing. This is one thing that isn't talked about as much. Like, for one thing, him doing this at all is very strange. But it's pretty obvious that he's only doing this for media attention or some sort of, like, sympathy. Because here's the thing. Chauvin says he's out of money and is underrepresented by a legal counsel in connection with the appeal. He said that he was denied representation by a public defender and is asking the Minnesota Supreme Court to review that decision. He's also said that the Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis no longer represents him now that he was convicted. So, Chauvin is literally going alone in trying to convince himself that he's in the right for some reason. This is just... Of course Chauvin thinks that he can get away with this somehow. But, obviously, I have a very suspicious feeling that this isn't going to end well for Chauvin again. And he's literally only doing this for publicity. Okay, so next story is coming from the U.S. Senate. Longtime Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley is running for re-election. Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley announced on Friday that he will run for re-election, further solidifying Republican chances of holding the seat in 2022. It's 4 a.m. in Iowa, so I am running. I do that 6 days a week. Before I start the day, I want you to know that what Barbara and I have decided. I'm running for re-election, a lot more to do for Iowa. We ask that you will support us. Basically, here's the thing. There's a reason why this is important. You see, this was very suspicious. Like, you see, of course, Chuck Grassley is in his 80s. I think he's 88, but he's probably just 80. Basically, he's in his 80s, so many people are like, wait, why are you running? Now, there's many reasons why people might say he is running. But here's actually one incredibly interesting reason. You see, if he was not running, the Iowa seat would have been competitive. Because Iowa is still a very competitive, state. Believe it or not. There are a lot of areas that are, competitive, but they're also, unpracticed. It seems like they're not competitive. Like Iowa, North Carolina. These places are competitive. But in practice, you might think, wait, are they really competitive? When in fact, yeah, they really are competitive. That's why Democrats did this whole thing to try and get Theresa Greenfield as their nominee in the last election and purposefully push someone like J.D. Scholten out of the race because they were like, we could win this seat, better make this person the not progressive. So, and that didn't turn out so well for them. Similar things are happening in this election. The Democrats basically all aligned around Abby Finneker. But now that Grassley's running for re-election, this seat is going to be taken off of, Democrat priority. And most people are predicting that Grassley will either resign or he'll just go until he dies. And then his, relative, I think it's his, grandson or his son, will be appointed in the seat in his place. It's just, he's just a way to keep this seat red, which is incredibly possible. But that doesn't mean don't check out progressive candidates. There's a guy who's somewhat progressive in the race named Dr. Glenn Hurst. And, we'll see if... He hasn't expanded on his platform. All he said is that he's in favor of Medicare for all. And it's yeah, that's good, but can you give me, anything else? But anyways, now let's move on to the next story. Lauren Boebert apparently has paid rent and utilities with campaign funds, FEC filing show. Republican U.S. Representative Lauren Boebert paid rent and utility bills with campaign funds in violation of federal campaign finance laws, new filings with the FEC show. The filings submitted to the FEC on Tuesday also indicate that Boebert reimbursed a campaign for the $6,650 worth of payments representatives for the Congress could not immediately be reached for comment. Each of the 4 payments in question, 2 of $2,000 each, and another 2 for $1,325 each, were amended to show payments for the same amount. Description on the same days as John Poicho, who addressed is the same as Shooter's Grill and Rifle, which Boebert owns. Poicho's relationship with Boebert was not immediately clear. So yeah, of course she would do that. Why wouldn't she? Boebert is okay with stretching the rules whenever she sees fit. And that's the truth of the matter. Not much else we can say on that except Boebert stinks, and let's try and see if someone can replace her. Anyways, now let's move on to the next story. This one is actually going to be the most, far from politics, but it is still relatively close because it's going to be dealing with copyright law. Okay, so apparently, Marvel is in a copyright battle with a decent number of the creators of certain characters. And when I say the creators, I mean the creators, relatives. Most prominently, the Ditkos, the people who created Spider-Man, and they are the heir of Spider-Man's copyright, but, they sold that copyright to Marvel, like Steve Ditko did that a long time ago, and now the heirs of the Ditko, fame are trying to get Marvel to, basically reimburse them for all of the money that they should be owed. And the reason I'm talking about this story is it's really weird in one regard. We're seeing a lot of people seem to side with the Ditkos. We're seeing a lot of people go yeah, let's sue Marvel. But basically, here's what the story actually is. A multi-billion-dollar corporation is trying to keep the rights to a character, and a bunch of entitled kids of the person who made the work feel that they're entitled to that money. So it's literally just 2 entitled people arguing over who is more entitled to the fruits of neither of their labor. And, there's not much else I can really say on that regard. It's just really weird. Now, this next story is one that has been getting media attention, but again, of course, for one particular congressperson who did something. The NDAA is being put onto the chopping block right now, and one of the biggest things that has been debated is that there is going to be a $1 billion piece of the budget that will go to the Iron Dome, the Israeli missile defense system that tries to stop Hamas rockets, that thing. Well, progressives enacted a very tough campaign to try and get that removed from the NDAA, which succeeded, actually. However, what immediately happened afterwards is that a bunch of, pro-Israeli members of Congress jumped on the idea of getting this put in as a separate bill altogether, and then basically steamrolled that into, going through. And they made it so that the bill would actually be voted on first of all the bills, so that there was literally no time anybody could actually properly analyze the bill in a meaningful way. The bill passed, obviously, with only 9 members of Congress voting against it. Those members of Congress being Cory Bush, Andre Carson, Chuy Garcia, Raul Grijalva, Thomas Massie, Marie Newman, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib. They all deserve props for doing so, but there's the thing, there are a couple of names, obviously, missing from those no's, and there are 2 names that actually got an interesting press coverage. Hank Johnson and AOC, who both voted present, but AOC's vote was significantly different. You see, AOC voted nay originally, but then it appears after a confrontation with Nancy Pelosi, she changed her vote to a present vote. And, as you can guess, the Doron left immediately jumped on the bandwagon of AOC's a fraud, AOC is terrible, AOC is blah blah blah, the same old bullshit. And it is even more egregious because of this. A lot of progressives voted for this, and not a single one of them got flack for it. Everybody was talking crap about AOC, saying AOC is bad, AOC is this, blah blah blah, AOC, they would post like the bike meme and go like, AOC vote present. Everybody would talk massive crap about AOC. It's like, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Jamal Bowman, Teresa Liga Fernandez, Barbara Lee, Mark Pocan, Jamie Raskin, like Katie Porter, Kai Kahele, all these people voted yes. And you're not going to talk about a single one of them. And even the people who are not Dorons did this. Like David Dole, he like posted on his like he made a video on this subject and he was like, AOC breaks with the squad. And it's like, Jamal Bowman broke with the squad even more so. Yet, of course, Jamal Bowman don't get the clicks. AOC gets the clicks. And I bring this up to every single person who does this. You're talking about a president vote. A president vote is way less egregious than a nay. I mean, not a nay, a yeah, in this particular instance. But here's the thing. They have, like, of course, yeah, these Congress members have to explain their votes. They have. The people who voted yeah and the people who voted, like, in AOC, they explain their votes very clearly. And, again, AOC's makes a whole lot more sense. But, of course, nobody cares about that. And the people who voted yeah, their explanation is barely, like, it makes sense in a way, but of course it's like, yeah, but come on. Like, the people who voted yeah, their explanation for it was, oh, we made it so that explicitly in the bill it states that this is only used for defense purposes, but it's like, come on. The word defense is used very liberally in Israel and all these other places. But AOC perfectly explains why she voted present. She has an amount of constituents who greatly support this. And when she originally voted nay and made this whole big fuss, she got some backlash in her district for it. And she was like, yeah, I mean, I wanted to do my best at trying to explain this, but it came very short-handed at this very last second because this bill was just incredibly rushed. So I basically just went with a present so I could just wash my hands of the affair. It's not a good explanation. It's not the best explanation. You can hate the explanation if you want. But it's an explanation, and it makes perfect sense. And of course, all you're literally doing is just playing into conservative hands by constantly crapping on AOC instead of actually doing something productive with your lives. I've had people go to me and be like, you're just bitching and moaning that I'm criticizing AOC. It's like, you're the one bitching and moaning. You're the one who's sitting here crying all day for a stupid president vote. A president vote on a bill that was going to overwhelmingly pass. Yeah, wouldn't it have been cooler if she voted nay? Yeah, cool. But guess what? It doesn't matter either way. Bill passed. There's nothing else we could do about it except, again, bitch and moan. AOC's in so much for the dialogue on this issue alone. A present vote would make no difference. Like, 10 years ago, progressives would have overwhelmingly voted yes on this. And would have criticized anybody who said anything against this. But we have a ton of progressives that voted nay. Like, the fact that this dialogue has been pushed is just amazing. And of course, there's also one piece of evidence, like, not evidence, but, like, one piece of, like, conspiratorialness about it. Like, of course, that Nancy Pelosi argument. She voted nay, and then Nancy Pelosi said something, and then she changed her vote to present. Many people have been speculating, okay, but what did she say? What did Pelosi say? And the biggest, like, conclusion was that maybe Pelosi threatened that she was going to, like, withhold the support for, like, the $3.5 trillion. And of course, AOC wouldn't just say this publicly. But, like, that's something that could potentially happen. Or maybe she threatens to, like, I don't know, maybe support a primary opponent to AOC or something. I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't matter. The bill passed. It's over. We lose. That's one of the biggest problems lefties have. We like to sit there and critically analyze every single failure. We like to, like, hyper-focus on the failure rather than simply just moving on. Like, when Lee Carter loses, people are like, oh, why did Lee Carter lose? Why did we do all this? Like, it's like, no, who cares? It's over. Plan B. Same thing with Force the Votes. Same thing with March for Minute Control. Same thing with all this stuff. Like, instead of just taking the L and moving on, we need to sit here and try to explain why the L doesn't actually need to be an L and all this stuff. And it's like, just take it and move on. Acknowledge the fact of the situation. Like, yes, AOC, like, and even this might be the fact of the situation. AOC might not even be as good on the Israel-Palestine issue as you would think. But guess what? Neither's Bernie, and neither's all these other people. Like, this is one more thing that I need to end this on, because I gotta move on to the next parts of the video. It's like Jackson Hinkle said the stupid thing that, again, he just makes up shit. Like, he said, like, AOC voted yes on this bill, when in fact she voted nay on the bill, which is just a common thing that people like to do. They said AOC voted for something, and then she clearly did not. But also, one of the things that he has stated that has, like, made people go, like, what? He stated, like, one of the reasons AOC's not a Palestine ally is because she supports a two-state solution. Guess what? So does Ilhan Omar, and so does basically every single pro-Palestinian person in existence, because that's the only solution. That's literally just dumb. And it's just, I'm so tired of these people. All people want to do is bitch and moan. That is all the left wants to do. Legitimately, that is all they want to do, because they can't handle the idea of having power. And the second the left gets a shred of power, you have to immediately say, like, oh no, that doesn't exist, that can't compute. Left can't have power, so they're not left, actually. It's just so stupid when you could be doing so much more productive things. And even the people who do, like, we need to do mutual aid, we need to do direct action, we need to do all this stuff. It's like, do that. Cut yourself off from electoral politics together if you must. But hating on your only elected allies is never going to work. Shitting on the biggest socialist group in America is not going to get you socialism. That is, in fact, hurting you getting socialism. Believe it or not, all of you Marxists, all of you Leninists, all of you MLs, all of you tankies, here's the tip. You're never going to get into power. Ever. DSA has and will continue to get power, which is why they are the ones who are pushing the socialist dialogue, and not a single communist has. Eugene Debs, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Michael Harrington, Norman Thomas, Vito Marcantonio, Ron Dellums, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Cory Bush, Jamal Bowman. We got all those. What do communists have? 2 representatives that were served 1 term each, and I don't know, Gus Hall. But anyways, let's get off of that topic. Now let's move on to foreign affairs. This one is going to be a short one, but still prevalent. El Salvador president changes his Twitter profile to read Dictator. Like, he changed his profile to say Dictator of El Salvador, and then changed it again to say coolest dictator of El Salvador. And there's, like, Nayib Bukele, like, he's, for those who don't know who Nayib Bukele is, he's basically like a right-wing populist guy he was the guy who, like, pushed Bitcoin in his country, and he did not do so hot. A lot of poor people in the state are hurting because of it. They enacted mass protests, and literally the only reason he did that was because he was being charged with corruption. And I'm just gonna take a wild guess right now. He's gonna be the next Juan Perón. That's just a fact. He's gonna be the next Juan Perón. In like 20 years, people are gonna look at Bukele and they're gonna like stan him on Twitter or something. Like he's weird. Like he's just stupid. Like all this vague populist BS. Like Populism Updates really likes him, and it's like this guy's literally ruining his country, and just in there be like, the quirky guy with the funny hat. It is like this guy is literally just ruining his country, and you're just sitting there laughing. You're laughing. This is a serious matter. Like Latin America, we don't screw around. If there's a guy who's like, there's no like funny haha. If he's a dictator, he's a dictator, and this guy's saying I'm a dictator, and it's like we don't take it lightly. He's not gonna be Pinochet or even to a degree Perón, but he's gonna do it in his own way. Anyways, let's move on to the next story. We're gonna be talking about the Canadian election, the massive waste of time that is the Canadian federal election, and literally, it was a waste of time because essentially nothing changed. Liberals basically stayed the same. The Conservatives literally stayed the same. The NDP Like, they all basically stayed the same. Like, literally, there is basically no mix-up in the parliament. Basically, here's the only mixes. Bloc Québécois gained 1 seat. The Liberals gained 4 seats. Jagmeet Singh and the NDP gained 1 seat. And the other 2 parties did not do anything. Bernier, he gained a decent amount of popular vote. Maxime Bernier. But we don't know what that means at the moment. The Greens, Elizabeth May won re-election. Paul Manley, for some reason, did not win re-election. But then, in an interesting race, like it was in like a Vancouver race or something, an Ontario race, I forget. But it was one race where the incumbent member of parliament stepped down, like he was a Liberal, and then for some reason the Liberals and progressive voters decided to shift their votes to the Green Party candidate, and the Green Party candidate overwhelmingly won. So a net change just didn't happen. Like, the New Democrats, they didn't win. And in fact, the race that they were putting most of their energy into, which was the race with Avi Lewis, didn't pan out. Aaron O'Toole, like, the Conservatives didn't, like, they made no changes literally whatsoever. Yves-Francois Blanchet, he, again, gained 1 seat, and he's just remained firm. And Trudeau, he gained a couple seats, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Now, the biggest thing that many people have been taking away from this is, again, waste of time and waste of money. Like, Trudeau wanted to, like, gain, like, extremely well, but he did not. But one of the biggest takeaways is that many people in the Canadian elections are starting to realize there's, like, a lot of things that need to be reformed. Because, like I said, nothing changed. Like, and a lot of people are even noticing, like, the Conservatives won the popular vote a second time, and they're not winning for some reason. So maybe things should need to be reformed. One of the major reforms many people are thinking of is not even really in regards to electoralism, just basically switching out the party leaders. Now, I'll say this. Blanchet, basically nobody is saying Blanchet should leave, because he's basically made the Bloc a very viable political force. So Blanchet will probably be sticking around a little bit longer. Jagmeet Singh, like, technically his party seems to think that he's doing fine, even though he's not. But let's be fair to Jagmeet Singh. He hasn't had the time. I assumed that he was going to have at least a decent amount of time to try and build himself as a, like, viable member of the Canadian parliamentary system, but he's still relatively new in the mainstream of things. Like, he only entered the scene in 2019, and then he's basically being told a second time, like 3 years later, yeah, do that again. And he still hasn't had enough time to make his, like, campaign strategy work, which is basically try to turn out the young kids. And again, hasn't really been shown to be working. Aaron O'Toole, his strategy was very simple. I'm liberal. Like, basically, I am basically the Liberals. What's the problem? That didn't pan out either. So many people are thinking maybe we should try and get rid of him and try something else to see if it works. Annemie Paul and Justin Trudeau are overwhelmingly... Like, the party overwhelmingly agrees that those two should go because Trudeau wasted everybody's time, and Annemie Paul basically killed the Green Party's chances of ever being relevant again. So, yeah. There's not much else I can say about that. Hopefully, Canada decides to wait this time around and actually do the election on its scheduled time. And hopefully there's, like, a reform that says that will be guaranteed to happen, which is one of the biggest reforms many people want. But anyways, now let's move on to the main topic of this video. We are going to be talking about a YouTuber by the name of Chris Ray Gun. Now, many people, again, might not know who Chris Ray Gun is. I wouldn't blame you if you're a political YouTuber or a political person of any type that just doesn't know who he is, because, well, you'll see why it's okay if you don't know who he is in a minute. But let's just briefly go over who he is. Chris Ray Maldonado, better known by Chris Ray Gun, is a Puerto Rican YouTuber who originally started producing YouTube videos of him playing the guitar, mostly doing covers of already popular songs. His first video was posted 11 years ago of a cover of Ain't No Rest for the Wicked. We'll be getting back to that song soon enough. But not that particular song. You'll know what it is if you know who he is. But he basically just posted that for basically a majority of his time on YouTube until he started getting into other content, such as gaming content, E3 predictions and reactions, Let's Plays, etc., etc. And that basically was a kickstart for him to get into the commentary community, critiquing Fox News for pushing the whole, video games are violent and causing mass shootings thing. And he mostly stayed in that field until a thing called Gamergate happened, which basically intersected gaming and politics. Chris, being a massive gamer, obviously went on the side of Anti-Gamergate. And by Anti-Gamergate, I don't mean someone who said that Gamergate was BS. I'm talking about someone who was like, oh, we need to stop these social justice warriors from ruining gaming. And he obviously didn't start it, I don't think, but he basically jumped on the anti-social justice warrior train, kickstarting from gaming to that. And originally it did just really stem from just gaming, a feminist says oh, I think you need to put more females in games, and he'd be like, why don't you just make your own games? Which I don't know if that's an actual argument he made, but it's that typical type of argument. But Chris knew his place. He knew that he should stick to gaming stuff, because it wasn't even necessarily that when he would try to branch out to other stuff that he wouldn't be good or anything of the sort. It's just that he why would he talk about some intense foreign policy debate when he's just some schmuck gamer? However, pretty soon it did start to be showing that he did start drifting away from gaming content, and it was focusing purely on the SJWs. Now, of course, I'm not gonna say oh, he posted only SJW stuff. Of course, he posted other stuff Fine Bros crap and all this other stuff. But it's as of course where his main things were social justice warriors bad for saying men have privilege, he would jump on the Sam Harris TYT debacle and then join Sam Harris' side saying Cenk Uygur doesn't represent him properly, which I actually tried to watch that debate and it's just boring, honestly. It's if you're watching a debate with someone you like versus someone you don't like, then you're biased automatically. But if you're watching a debate between two people you don't like, it's just I don't care. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that Chris probably liked Sam Harris because Sam Harris was one of the leaders of New Atheism, which is where this type of stuff stemmed from. I think my first video of his that I watched was his one about LGBTQ and Islam, because again, it was that was one of the big things that these types of YouTubers would be part of, the skeptic community. Someone should make a video just doing analyzing that type of the line. It's there was a line of the atheist YouTubers to the skeptic community, or they were the skeptic community. You know what I'm talking about, how the skeptic community came from oh, they were just the atheists that would make fun of Christian fundamentalism, and then they started shifting to radical Islam, and then that shifted into the alt-right somehow with the branch off of some people joining BreadTube, that sort of stuff. Now the thing was Chris Raygun was, but the thing was with these skeptic YouTubers, Chris started becoming friendly with them, a lot of them in fact. He became friendly with Paul Joseph Watson, Lauren Southern, Sargon of Akkad, all of these people. He became friendly with Dave Rubin and was saying Rubin was one of the harpenders of free speech. One YouTuber that he was very friendly with, which I don't know if he's still friendly with, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but one that you probably heard of is Shoeonhead, who was sort of in that same realm. They were when they would give their politics, they would reasonably still be classified as left-wing, but of course it always seemed very they always seem to have very friendly relationships with right-wing people. Some black guy, and that's his name. That's an actual name of a YouTuber. All these other people, like, not saying you can be friends with them. Obviously you can be. But it did seem really weird, especially considering this left-winger would say very right-wing things. He would be very critical of Black Lives Matter. He would literally say that Lauren Southern was one of his favorite journalists. I thought I knew the episode where he talked about this so I could play it here, but I really can't find it. But I remember those words so vividly because it's literally just like, he's literally saying this white supremacist journalist is one of his favorites. He like overplayed like the SJW's rhetoric to the point where it did seem like he was just pulling like very obscure things that were like, really? He talked about Cuphead and like Cuphead needed to analyze the like racial themes of these 30s animations, and it's like, is this really that important? Like, I watched it recently to try and like get an understanding of like it, and it's like, is this really like this isn't the most common thing that people are saying. It's like this obscure article that he pulled up to try and get like the Cuphead racist thumbnail. Now, one big thing that happened that may have triggered a like push to a like new center, not a new center, but like a new form of his ideology was when he started dating Lacey Green, who, for those who don't know, Lacey Green is a prominent social justice warrior YouTuber. And basically those two started dating, even though they seemed to be like diametrically opposed to each other. And then those two, when they started dating, they basically like started moving to a more, like, they started moving towards a center between their two viewpoints. He was still extremely anti-SJW, but it wasn't until a video where he like posted a video about like dating websites that he basically changed his like content extensively. Not even going for like the anti-SJW crowd, because I think that was when the craze started officially dying, and he started posting just more normal, I mean, of course, normal in the sense of like doesn't post that much political content anymore, and instead starts posting more general topics, you know, back to gaming, back to like talk about weird animes, just going back to like edgy humor that he was best known for. Drinking bleach, haha, get it? Funny. Now he basically just, I don't even think he talks much about politics anymore at all. Like his most recent episodes, they're just like, this isn't politics themed, which is fine if he doesn't want to post that content. That's, of course, right. But he should post whatever content he wants. And it actually does benefit because he has shifted a lot of his views of, like, it doesn't seem to be like actual, like, politics, but, like, his rhetoric, now he doesn't seem to think SJWs are, like, the biggest evil of the world anymore, which makes sense because they're not. He doesn't make fun of the wage gap, and he doesn't make fun of, like, the crazy new genders, like anti-girl. He seems to be more on the side of, like, yeah, whatever. Which, I mean, I think he's technically always been, because, like, in one of his most famous songs, There Ain't No Rest for the Triggered, which is a cover of There Ain't No Rest for the Wicked, but a parody song. And, like, he basically, there's one part where it's like, and a man, he dropped his keys on like a gymnast on trapeze. I caught him in midair and said, "Sir, you dropped these." He turned around in pure disgust, said, "I'm not even a man, I'm a bigender girl with manly tendencies." And he said, "Okay, sir, whatever." And he called up the police. Like, he was already on the side of like, who cares? But it's like a different side of who cares, because in that thing, he still calls him sir, even though the person literally stated, I don't want to be called sir. But it's like, who cares, really? Not who cares about that situation. If in real life, that'd be kind of screwed up. But, like, it's a cartoon on the internet. Calm down. Now, Chris Ray Gun actually sort of explains to me one thing. Like, he is really the reason I get these people online that say, like, they went through a Nazi phase. Now, you might say, wait, what? What? Excuse me? Let me explain. Because I'm a huge fan of Chris Ray Gun, and Chris Ray Gun was a fan of, not a fan, but like a friend of all of these, like, Nazi creators that people talk about. When people say online, like, I used to be a Nazi, it's like, they don't mean like they were like a nine. Like, they don't mean that. What they mean is they were fans of reactionary content creators and posted reactionary content online. And that usually means they, like, supported Lauren Southern. They supported Gavin McInnes. They supported Sargon of Akkad, people that Chris Reagan was friends with and aligned himself with. And Chris makes me understand that it's very easy to fall into that trap. Because, like, if I was not, like, politically aware already, I would have done that too. I 100% would have. Now, of course, I wouldn't have, I don't know how far I would have went because, you know, I'm Latino and I'm like Chris Reagan, I don't have, like, the skin of a white boy. But Chris was always like that. Like, he was their friend to show, like, they're not that bad of a person. Like, Lord Southern would be like, I believe that demographics and the white people need to be saved. But Chris would be like, ah, man, come on. She's not that bad when you get to know her. That was Chris Reagan's purpose. Like, I mean, of course, that's a very strong generalization. Maybe he was I would assume that he was at the very least legitimately friends with these people and they weren't trying to use him. Well, at least some of them weren't. But, like, of course, in order to play the game, that's what happens. That is just basically Chris Reagan. Like, I don't hate him, obviously. In fact, I love his content. I think he's hilarious. I even just recently subscribed to Snark Tank because it's just like, yeah, I want more, and he doesn't post that often, so give me more. But if there's one thing we could say about Chris Reagan definitively, is that Chris Reagan was in the right long before everyone else on one thing.
Jimmy Dore is just this smarmy, like, insect of a person. Just the way he speaks and the shit that he says, it's really aggravating.
Chris, I'm sorry none of us listened to you, but it would have helped us in the long run. So anyways, that's all I gotta say on this. Chris Reagan is okay, but, you know, he could do better. I say as he has massive, like, way more subscribers and fans and relationships than I have ever had, so maybe I'm just doing it wrong. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video might comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, check out my articles on the Independent Political Report, or consider supporting me on Patreon.